Good evening, you're watching Brass-tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. There was a bitter face-off in Parliament today between the opposition and the government. Leading the charge on behalf of the opposition was Leader of the Opposition Rahul Gandhi, who accused the Modi government of selling out to America under the bullying of President Trump. He alleged that in the India-US trade deal, the interests of farmers, small businesses and India's energy security had been compromised. The BJP hit back with a blast from the past, saying that in 2008, when the UPA was in power, they were even willing to give up India's nuclear sovereignty by agreeing to American and international inspections of our nuclear sites. So the big question is, who surrendered? Was it the UPA in 2008 in the Indo-US nuclear deal, for which Manmohan Singh was willing to stake his government? Or is it Mr. Modi and his government in the India-US trade framework that has now been accepted after 6 months of bickering and back and forth between Washington and Delhi? So it's a question of, is it surrender or is it, as they say in this day and age, Dhurandhar?
I am saying that you have sold India. Are you not ashamed of selling India? Yes. Do you have no shame of selling India? You have sold our mother, Bharat Mata. Do you have no shame?
राहुल जी ने कहा कि हमारा देश, भारत देश को आपने सेल कर दिया है। मैं सदन में कहना चाहता हूं, आज तक कोई माई के लाल पैदा नहीं हुआ जो भारत को सेल कर सकता है, कोई खरीद सकता है, नहीं हो सकता है।
Well, it's not just the government. Even the United States has affirmed that agriculture has been shielded by India. In fact, there was some confusion and a revision of the fact sheet that was put out by the US White House, particularly with regarding to agriculture. There was this phrase about certain pulses, which seems to have now been removed, and it's now aligned with the joint statement that was issued last week. So India's deal with the US is as per what has been agreed between both parties. The earlier version did mention that India will reduce tariffs on certain pulses, but now the new version does not mention anything about pulses at all. And of course, pulses are a sensitive subject here in India. The price of it is also a sensitive factor, and the fact that a large number of farmers grow it is also a sensitive factor. The older version also mentioned that India is committed to buying $500 billion worth of American goods. This has again been a lot of back and forth around this $500 billion. How can we get to $500 billion? We're currently only importing about $45 billion worth of American goods. But the new one has also removed the phrase agriculture, so no agricultural products are part of the $500 billion. It only mentions energy, ICT, coal, etc., aircraft and aircraft parts. But even on India's overall commitment, the wording has been changed back to what it was from India has committed to buy. It has now been reworded back to India intends to buy. It is an intention, and if it is not able to keep up with that intention, it's not going to get penalized for the same. There's also the question of digital service tax removal. The new fact sheet says that will be negotiated. The digital tax service is a tax on some of the big tech companies like Google, Facebook, etc. And finally, on the question of Russian oil, earlier there was no mention of Russian oil. Now it accepts that India will stop buying Russian oil. India, of course, has always maintained that India's energy security is a sovereign decision. So who India buys oil from, how much India buys oil from person A or B or C, country A, B or C, that is something that is India's sovereign decision.
You have opened the door. You have opened the door to mechanized American farms, thousands and thousands of acres each farm. You have opened the door to crush our poor farmers.
किसानों की सुरक्षा को पूर्णतः ध्यान में रखकर ही यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के साथ बातचीत हुई, फैसले हुए, और ये भारत के सभी किसानों को मैं पूरी तरीके से आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि उनके हित सुरक्षित हैं.
So as the Congress accuses the centre of compromising on India's farmers, on India's small and medium businesses, and in fact even on India's energy security and sovereignty, the government has now turned the tables, saying that if you go back to when the UPA was in power in 2008, and this was also a famous deal at that time, the India-US nuclear deal, Manmohan Singh had in fact staked the fate of his government and had won that vote very narrowly because of support from the Samajwadi Party and the BSP at that time. Gregory Schultz, who was the then US ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, had said in July of 2008 that New Delhi had committed to submit its entire civil nuclear program to international inspection. The former ambassador said that New Delhi had committed to separate its military and civil nuclear activities and also committed to submitting its entire civil nuclear program to international inspection. So who traded with who, or who gave up India's secrets and India's sovereignty? That question is now being countered and put back to the opposition, and particularly to the Congress and to Rahul Gandhi. So while political barbs were flying thick and fast in Parliament, the question again boils down to: have we negotiated the best deal possible? Who has sold out who? And most importantly, can we now get on with it? Because we've had 6 months of awful bickering, almost an appending of the India-US strategic partnership. After much negotiation, after much back and forth, India finally has a deal which has competitive tariff rates compared to all our peers. Can we now get on with the business of exporting and importing? Tuhin Sinha is joining us, national spokesperson of the BJP. Anand Srinivasan is spokesperson of the Congress Party. Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat. Ajay Bagga is a market expert who's joining us. Let me start with you, Tuhin. Mr. Rahul Gandhi today says the deal risks crushing Indian farmers by opening up the agriculture sector. He says 18% tariffs are disproportionate. Before Mr. Trump, our average tariff rate was 3%. India did not negotiate on an equal footing. He also says that, for example, Bangladesh has managed to get a better deal in textiles if it's manufactured out of US imported cotton. So you basically, and the words Mr. Gandhi used were, Mr. Modi's government has sold out India, has sold out Bharat Mata. Please respond.
Well, good evening, Shraddha. Good evening, everybody. Rahul Gandhi today spoke in detail about, grip, choke, and tap politics, which essentially is a euphemism for his fakery, which he has been employing in the last several years without any gains. Now, when he talks about the budget, clearly he has not read the budget. He says that India has not made any provisions for supply chains, whereas the Indian Semiconductor Mission 2.0, as well as the rare earth corridor spanning 4 states, is precisely to address this concern. So he clearly does not seem to have read the budget. He talks about India selling data, whereas the biggest impetus has been given in this budget to data localization, which he again does not.
All right, we've just lost the audio.
All
right, go on. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, go on.
The rights of our farmers. I think it needs to be very clearly told to him that India's farm sector, India's poultry sector is completely protected. There are barely 4 to 6 items which include red sorghum, which includes tree nuts, which includes dried distilleries grains, which includes fresh processed fruits, which would get a lower tariff.
Okay.
Barring that, the entire agriculture sector, the entire poultry sector stands protected. And even over there, the total tree nut imports to India was to the tune of $1 billion, which is, $1 billion of the total $1.7 billion agricultural dollar. So imagine, Indian farm, the imports, which will enjoy a lesser tariff of barely 4 to 6.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Anand Srinivasan, agriculture is protected. This is the best deal that you could have got compared to all our neighboring countries, peer countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. This is the best tariff rate you could have got. And India was one of the few countries that held out, that negotiated with Mr. Trump, did not succumb to Mr. Trump's bullying. And finally, you have this deal. And on every point that Mr. Gandhi has raised, on agriculture, on energy security, on data, all of those, the government is today countered.
No, where have they countered? There is a very famous acronym in America going around called Taco Trump. In the morning, what was put out as a fact sheet, after Mr. Gandhi spoke and blistering speech, Taco Trump changed it and put out one more fact sheet. For all you know, tomorrow morning we may have a third fact sheet. So let us not take this as the final fact sheet. Let us look at the agreement. Let the agreement be signed. First of all, we have surrendered in the budget itself, we have surrendered the data protection completely, and you have allowed foreigners to access your data. We have already agreed to cap, the word has been used, is in the second term, to cap our digital taxes. And as of now, whatever the Department of Agriculture, Department Secretary of Agriculture of the United States has said, that India has agreed to import a lot of agricultural produce.
No. That was much before the joint
that
statement came out, sir. Sir, let's be very clear with the facts. The joint
No,
statement came out last Saturday
every
morning.
4 hours there's a change.
Brooke Rollins's
Allow
tweet
me-
came out
allow me
last
to-
Tuesday.
allow me-
No,
there is
no,
no
one
joint
second, please.
statement.
Let's be
There is no joint
factual.
statement.
Let's debate on facts.
No,
The
just-
four
you should allow
items,
me to
the
speak.
four
If you want
items.
to
Sir,
keep on speaking, why do you call
no,
me?
sir, because you
allow
because you
the
put out
gentleman without
because you put out
interruption.
because you
No,
put
no,
out a
no,
wrong
listen
fact
to
to
me.
our viewers.
You allowed
No.
the other gentleman to speak
No,
without interrupting.
I rebutted him also. All
No,
I'm
you
saying
allow
is,
me to
allow
finish
me
and then
10
go back.
seconds to correct the facts. Number one, there are 4 items that have been exempted under agriculture.
No.
Tree
They have not been
nuts,
exempted.
soybean
There is
oil,
no deed
certain
that-
fruits,
please understand, Raka,
and red
this is a
sorghum
fact
and
sheet.
DDG,
Allow me to
dried
finish.
distilled grain. These are the 5 items that have been exempted as far as agriculture is concerned.
Listen
Everything
to me.
else is protected. Now, please go on.
No.
Okay, what?
There is no word saying, listen to me,
Hmm.
there is no word in the fact sheet saying the rest of the items are protected. It is an assumption. You are assuming that it is
No.
protected. Tomorrow another fact sheet can come, as it has happened in the case of South Korea, where he has gone back and said, you have not done what you promised to do. And the Indian side and the US side have to sign an agreement together. What is being proposed is a fact sheet that is being put out by America. There is no a joint statement.
No, I'm
At
reading
this
from
point
the
of
joint
time,
statement that was
listen to
released
me,
on
listen to
Saturday
me.
morning. These
Listen
are the
to
4
me.
items,
Let
agricultural
Saturday morning
items
come.
that have been exempt. Everything else is protected.
Let
Rice,
us-
wheat,
let
maize,
Saturday
poultry,
morning
everything.
come. Let Saturday morning come. Today, as of today, you do not. If every 4 hours this President Trump can change what he is saying,
Okay.
as of today, we do not. As we speak, there is no joint agreement signed.
Okay, so let me ask the
have
experts.
a-
Let
listen
me
to me
ask.
finish.
Let me ask
Let me finish.
Ashok sir. It's been 8 minutes since
let
I
me
began the
finish.
debate. I've
You
only
have-
been with the
you
political
have a
spokespersons.
business
Let me please go.
framework agreement.
Let me please go
That's
to
all you
the diplomats and to the market expert. Ashok Sajjanhar, let me ask you, sir. What would you say to those people who say, and including Mr. Gandhi, he said that in his speech today, oh, the tariffs before Mr. Trump were 3%. We are now at 18%. It's higher than Europe. It's higher than South Korea, Japan. What are we celebrating?
Thank you very much, Zaka. 2 points let me make here very quickly. Number one, the tariffs might be higher than the UK, tariffs might be higher than the European Union, but they are lower than our competitors. Who are our competitors? They are Bangladesh, they are Pakistan, they are Vietnam, they are Malaysia, they are Indonesia. They are lower than all. What we compete with them is textiles, is apparel, is footwear, leather, gems and jewelry, also in terms of some chemicals, etc. We are lower, we are more competitive than all of those. We are not competing in these areas with Japan or ROK or UK. The second point, as far as tariffs are concerned, Zaka, I think everyone knows tariffs are paid not by the exporters. Tariffs are paid by the consumers in the United States. So, they are being required to pay more, which is going to the US government. The Indian exporters or the Indian government have nothing to do. They don't have to pay anything extra. So I think all this argument is a very lame argument. It does not have legs to stand upon. So I think this is just arguments being made for the sake of arguments. And we have come out in a much better position.
So, sir,
Whether
one of
it
the
is
things he
that-
made today, one of the arguments he made today was on the case of textiles. He says Bangladesh signed a deal after us, but Bangladesh has been given a clause where if it is made out of US imported cotton yarn, then it faces 0% tariffs in the United States, and that India will be stuck, or Indian textile exporters will be stuck with 18%.
No, the point is, you have to get the yarn from the United States. You look at the transportation cost. You look at the cost of the yarn. If it was, so favorable to make textiles with the yarn from the United States, the Bangladesh and the others would have also started doing it already. But it is not competitive. It'll be highly uncompetitive for them to get the yarn from there, get the cotton from there. Without the Indian yarn, they will not really be able to make competitive goods. And there also, they are being required to pay 19%, whatever is the tariff that has been brought down to 19%. So
Okay.
they will not be able to withstand
So
the
let me
competition.
ask Ajay Bagga this. Clearly the market view, Mr. Bagga, has been that this lack of a deal for the last 6 months was a pain point. It was hurting our exporters. A lot of FPIs and FIIs also pulled out of India through much of 2025. But ever since this deal got announced, I think the very next day, the markets went up over 2,000 points. I think it's holding on to much of those gains. So the markets clearly have welcomed this deal, even if there is pain of 18%. So shouldn't there be a consensus, a political consensus, Mr. Bagga, whether this deal is good for us or not? Mr. Gandhi says Mr. Modi has sold out India to America. Mr. Modi's party says this is the best deal that anybody could have got under the circumstances. What is the actual reality? What is the economic reality of this deal?
Yeah, Jacob, thanks very much for bringing out the economic reality. I would like to state that Korea had an FTA with the US, which was a 0% FTA. After their negotiations, they are at 15% now. US exports to Korea at zero. Korea gets 15%, plus it has to invest $350 billion into the US. Japan has to invest $750 billion and it gets 15%. European Union has signed up for $750 billion of energy purchases, which it doesn't consume right now, for getting 15%. Australia, which had an FTA Zaka of 0%, has been saddled with 15%, even though the US has a surplus with Australia. Australia gets more US goods than it sends to US. Still, it has been saddled with 15%. Coming to Russian trade, India-Russia trade is $63 billion. China-Russia trade is $245 billion. They dared not touch China with any punitive tariffs. We were singled out for punitive tariffs. So when there was no trade, everyone was saying this government is not able to deliver a trade. When there is a trade, we are saying, oh, you have sold out at 18%. When FTAs have been from zero, they have been moved to 15. You think 18 is a bad decision? Second, on all the points that were brought up, on agriculture, we sent $6.5 billion to the US. They send us $2 billion. There is no capacity right now of sending us soya and maize and all, because we are quite self-sufficient. We are in fact surplus. We will not go and buy from them even if they try to sell. You look at digital services, that thing has been removed. Everybody has missed that. In last night's change, they have said a mutually agreeable agreement will be formed on the entire digital ecosystem. Digital tax has not been removed. That also is
No, because
gone.
today Mr. Gandhi also said the biggest asset that Indians have is Indians' data. And if the dollar needs to remain strong, then Mr. Trump needs to be told that we won't give you Indians' data on a cheap basis. Help us make sense of it. I mean, what's the connection between Indian data, the trade deal, and the dollar being strong?
Now, definitely, there is nothing on the dollar. And in fact, Trump wants a weak dollar to increase his competitiveness. So his unstated policy is to weaken the dollar and to become more competitive. Indian data going out is a misnomer. We have been talking about localizing the data centers. In fact, you look at Zaka, 22 years of tax holiday has been given to Indian data center operators. So an Indian data center operator today is incentivized to put up a data center, and all cloud services offered by MNCs have to use this Indian data center. So where will that data go out then? We are the only country which banned TikTok. US has still got TikTok. Europe is still talking about it. We went and banned it because we realized China was taking out data. Okay. So I think these things beyond the rhetoric, and that's why market is saying very good for manufacturing, very good for auto. And finally, on the Bangladesh deal, Zaka, people don't understand, Bangladesh doesn't have yarn or fabric processing. They can make garments. You give them fabric, they stitch the garments. India, out of $16 billion of cotton to fabric that Bangladesh takes every year, 9 billion is China, 6 billion is India, 240 million is US. That there is a natural risk there. It takes months for that US cotton to come with all the shipment issue. and you have to process it into fabric, which factories are not there in Bangladesh, nor do they have the money. So this is a misnomer that 0%. In fact, it's opened something for us. We take US cotton, Zaka. We can go back tomorrow and say, for all your yarn and cotton, I'm happy, I'm taking as much and you give me 0%, because we have the capacity.
Okay. Tween Sinha, the 2 points where it's not just the opposition, but some experts have also criticized the government is one, what is this business about committing to not buying Russian oil? Today, the oil minister said we've made no such commitment. It's a sovereign decision. India will decide where it gets the best as far as India's energy security is concerned, whether you purchase from country A or B or C. Yet the Americans are saying that, look, there's data to show that India has cut down its Russian energy supply and they've made a commitment to completely move away from Russian energy. The second one is this $500 billion of purchases. Currently, India is purchasing at $45 billion of American goods. Even if it is over 5 years, how and where will you purchase $500 billion of American goods? And is this not economic coercion? Is he not, as Mr. Gandhi says, having a chokehold on you, forcing you to buy American products?
Zaka, let me address your second part first. When, as in the clarification today, it is very clear that India will work towards purchasing $500 billion. But over the next 5 years, the possibilities are anyway enormous. The total trade is likely to expand by at least twice that number. I will give you some data. In just the last 4 years, India manufactured mobile phones exported to US have earned revenues to the extent of roughly $20 billion. This is how we have created opportunities. But obviously the Congress party is cynical everywhere. The Congress party does not believe the ability in the aptitude and the abilities of Indians. When we talk about data localization, every expert would tell you that is going to be immensely beneficial to Indian IT companies. But obviously Rahul Gandhi has a different theory. He feels that we are compromising, on our data. He feels that will harm our IT industry. So how do you deal with a person whose politics now borders on lunacy and, irreversible cynicism?
Okay.
He has been concocting, he has been misrepresenting every detail in the budget. Now, when it comes to Russian oil, our stand has been very clear. Our sovereignty will not be impinged. And besides, let me also tell you that 3 years ago, India's purchase of Russian oil was to the tune of 2 to 3% of our total oil. So it's purely market forces, it's purely market factors which dictate that decision.
So, Mr. Srinivasan, this whole thing about compromising India.
Can you allow me to speak, Zaka?
This compromising India's interests. In 2008. I'm asking you a question, sir. Let me finish my question. In 2008, the Manmohan Singh government, Dr. Manmohan Singh staked his government. It went to a majority vote. It went to a no-trust vote in the parliament on the Indo-US nuclear deal. In the Indo-US nuclear deal, it was explicitly said that India has committed to separate its military and civil activities and submit its entire civil nuclear program to international inspections. Was there not a sellout?
It was not a sellout, because in most of the world, and as this government has passed a Shanti bill recently, all your civilian sector is going to be opened up to the corporates. So you are going to have foreign investment in it.
No, that's not the same thing as inspection, please. Again, investment, inspection, not the same thing. No, you speak, sir, but...
Your claim on the market is patently false. For 2 years, markets have not gone anywhere. The market hit a high of 26,300 about 15 months back. For 15 months, the market has been operating between 25,000 and 26,500, while the rupee has plummeted from 71 to 92. So you have, in dollar terms, in the last 2 years, the Indian investor has lost terribly. Your foreign investors have left India because the valuations are too high, and they have lost money in dollar terms. The rupee has been the most weakest currency for all these years. The agreement does not talk anything about our software services. The European agreement talks about protection for software services and visa requirements. There is no talk of H1B. The most important export from India to US is software services. There is no talk. We have been spineless. We have not brought up the H1B. We could have said we will not do any deal with you till you bring down the H1B fees to $10,000. it still stays at $100,000.
Sir, this is
We
a
don't
trade
get to
agreement
send
on
our
goods
people
and merchandise. This is not a trade agreement on services.
but Europe, you had services. Europe, you had
No,
services.
so each
You
deal
get to
stands
choose.
on its own
That
merit.
is exactly why. That is exactly. That is why we said you surrendered. You did what Trump
Mr.
wanted to
Sajjanar,
do. You did not
nothing on
stand up for your
H1B, nothing
services.
on software
Your
services.
services-
You could have used that as
services-
leverage, is what the Congress
Zaka,
spokesperson is
please listen
contending.
to me.
No, you
Services
see,
is not because-
Zaka, you are very right. You know,
We
this
have
does
surrendered.
not deal with services. This deals with only trade in goods. This is not a free trade agreement. This is only an interim bilateral agreement. Even the full-fledged bilateral trade agreement will be decided later on. The agreement with the EU, European Union, was a free trade agreement, as are the FTAs with many of the other countries, with UK that we have signed, with New Zealand, etc. Those are all FTAs. This is not an FTA.
Okay.
As far as Russian oil is concerned, Zaka, if you permit, you know what we have said very clearly again at the Parliamentary Foreign Relations Committee. Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, was there. And he said very categorically that the companies will go out and they will decide on the basis of pricing, on the basis of quality, on the basis of geopolitical situation.
Okay.
And that is what they have done. So, you know, if it has been coming down a little bit, it is because of the decision that those companies have taken. As far as the 500 billion thing is concerned, you know, you mention, and also it is stated, it's not a commitment, it is a it's an intention.
Yeah.
But also, if you look at the 13th February, you know, when Prime Minister Modi was in Washington, D.C. last year, the two sides decided that by 2030, we will have a bilateral trade volume of $500 billion. And if that is going to be there, and if it's going to be balanced trade, as Mr. Trump would like it to have, that means in that year, you are already having $250 billion worth of exports from US to India and $250 billion of export from India to the US.
Okay.
So, you know, the opportunities in terms
definitely
of
there.
data
No
centers,
doubt about it, yeah.
Aircraft,
etc.
Yeah, huge
I'll give Mr. Bagga the final word. Again, what investors, particularly in the market, are looking for is, does this now stem the tide? Will FPIs, FIIs find India more interesting in terms of valuation? Will that money that has gone out of India in the last year and a half come back? Will the slide of the rupee be arrested?
Yeah, Zaka, it's a very known fact that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We have come back on the table. We were given punitive tariffs. It has happened in Korea. Both political parties sat together and figured out how do we deal with Trump. It's happened in Japan, which is such a divided polity where they all sat together in national interest. That's what I would say the economy is looking at the politicians to do, to take a broader view. As far as the economics is concerned, Zaka, it improves the sentiment immensely. India is on the table again. That's a very big thing. You were singled out for 50%. Somebody like Switzerland got 39% tariffs. Their president went and did all the negotiations, got back to 15% of EU. We have reached 18%. It's not a full stop at 18. The things will keep changing. Things will improve also. And right now, bringing in services was not in our interest because it's a very lopsided. If you look at the services deficit, it becomes very huge. Okay. And there are enough MAGA hawks who are looking at that. Correct. It was not in our national interest to combine the two. We have done the goods one. Let's make that work. Let's see how good our trade works out. Then we look at services over time. Okay. One more thing, Zaka. What we are missing today, Russia, there was a Reuters report, Zaka, 23 lakh workers are needed in Russia. 23 lakh. Indian construction workers, 71,000 have gone last year. I would say we should have passed something in Parliament today that skill our workers to go to Russia. Imagine if 20 lakh youth of UP were sent to Russia and they started sending FX back. These are the kind of things. Japan has asked us for 3 lakh workers. We are not able to supply them. These are the political dialogues that the country is looking for.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll end on that note. That's a great note that Mr. Bagga ended our discussion on, that at the end of the day, whichever government is in power has to look out for the interests of our people And I think the government has said that that has been their foremost and overriding concern. They've got what they believe is a fair deal, an equitable deal. And as Mr. Bagga said, we're back on the table now. India is a place where you can do business. Indian exports are now competitive. At 50%, they were uncompetitive. They were not simply there in the market. Right now, they're back in the competitive phase, and it is up to our exporters to continue exporting to the US, to UK, Europe, etc., and to take that story forward. I want to get an American perspective on this. Everett Eisenstadt is a former Deputy Assistant to the President of International Economic Affairs and Deputy Director of the National Economic Council in President Donald Trump's first term. Thank you very much, Mr. Eisenstadt, for speaking with us. Now, in the context of this trade deal, do you think that this resets the relationship? Could the tariffs have been lower than 18%? Today, the Indian Parliament debated this issue, and the opposition parties here have criticized the government of the day, saying that this is a complete sellout to America. How will you speak to that political attack or to that concern that's been raised here?
Well, I think it's important to keep the agreement in context. I mean, the alternative is to have maintain the higher tariff rates of 25% and potentially the additional 25%. And I think that can be impactful on the Indian export markets. And obviously, I think 18% would be preferred over the higher rate. So I don't really think there's an opportunity to reduce the rate below much below that. So I don't think this is I think this is a good agreement. It's an interim agreement and one that will lead to continued dialogue, which I believe is very important for the U.S.-Indian relationship.
Is the United States trying to pressurize India into cutting Russian oil to try and force President Putin's hand and trying to get him to end the Ukraine war? Again, there's concern and criticism here that India has given up its energy security to America. It's America that is deciding who India buys oil from, and thereby this is a direct infringement on India's energy security. How will you respond to that?
I can't reconcile those two perspectives. I think that the administration's been very clear that this is removal of the 25% tariff is contingent upon stopping purchases of Russian oil. But that's something the two governments need to work through. And it's obviously, as you note, that's a choice of the Indian government. If they choose not to buy Russian oil, that's their choice. If they choose to buy it, then they do. That's their choice as well. Of course, you do have the tariff out there that may apply to some additional imports from India, but that's a decision of the government.
Do you think at the end of the day this is a fair and balanced deal? It's a win-win for both sides. There's big concern on both sides, and you would expect it, on agriculture. Agriculture is one of the highly protected sectors here in India, some of which will now be opened up. But the opposition says it will hurt the Indian farmer. How do you see this as a former negotiator who sat on the table on sensitive issues like agriculture?
Well, we need to see. I think that a lot of the details of the agreement are still being worked out. My understanding is that there's a hope that the agreement will be finalized in March. So there's several weeks to work this out. I haven't seen the text actually, so we don't know, which products are covered and which aren't. So until we have that, I think it's hard to make a determination. I'm fairly confident that the Indian negotiators, having been at the negotiating table myself, I'm confident that they worked very hard to get the balance that they need to make this a politically solid agreement and one that can work for India. At the same time, the U.S. negotiators are going to be pursuing the same objectives. We've got some outstanding products that we export around the world. We'd love for Indian consumers to have access to those products. So I think it's balanced. We'll have to see, of course, when the text comes out, but I believe it should work in the interest of both of our countries.
All right, we'll leave it at that, Mr. Eisenstadt. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18 with your thoughts and perspective. Of course, the